All right, 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM listeners, you already know what time it is, and right here, right now, we actually have a very special, legendary guest. He is a multi-platinum West Coast hip-hop producer who is most known for his time at the infamous Death Row Records. We have Sandman right here live on the line. How are you doing this evening?
Man, I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing best I can possibly be down here in Canada, man. Just enjoying the warm weather while we have it, man. So I hope you're enjoying the same on your end as well, because I believe you're still out there in California, so you got that summer weather all year round, man. So us Canadians are definitely jealous about that.
You say you Canadians are a little bit jealous about that?
I'm looking jealous about that, definitely.
Oh, I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, well, the last week was over the hundreds. 108, 100 as far as where we are consistently for about maybe 8-10 days straight. So, yeah, I'm quite sure you guys aren't envious about that part of it. But it's all good.
Yeah, I was seeing that on KTLA on the television station about how you guys got up to the hundreds, and of course those forest fires that are going on right now. I hope everything is all cleared up relatively with those fires going on over there.
Yeah, it's not necessarily right where I am, but it's not too far driving distance. I hope it is too, because that's, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine.
And Sandman, I know you're a busy individual, man, so I'm going to dive right into this broadcast, but I want to take you back to the beginning of your amazing career this far, man, and I have to ask, what originally inspired you to actually get into producing music, man, because when Sandman is on the beat, you know it's going to be a treat.
I appreciate that. First of all, let me say that my ability to do music is first and foremost a gift from God. I do not hide that. I do not shove it down people's throats. In the physical, practically everyone on my mother's side of the family plays an instrument or multiple instruments and sings. My grandmother on my maternal side directed the choir, played piano. One of my uncles played the organ. Multiple cousins and aunts sing and or sang. My grandfather, I'm not going to say he could rival Pavarotti, but I do know that he could have gone professional opera singing. All right? So I'm just letting you know that's how good he was, but I do know that because the Lord had called him to preach pretty much every time he got ready to try to go professional, he either caught laryngitis or the studio burned down or, something of that nature. But it is in the blood, and I'm grateful. And all that I do, I just try to make, if my grandmother was still here and the people in my family who are still here, I just try to make them proud and just try to exercise the gift that the Lord has given me, man. That's it. That's all.
And I do know as well that you are actually a well-established drummer as well. I have to ask, because obviously, like you said, you have family members that sang and played other instruments. I have to ask as well, when it comes to the drumming, did you ever actually try to venture into the vocalist aspect of the music industry, or did you just keep everything just with your instruments and of course producing?
Well, when I started out in as far as hip hop, I was rapping at first, and I didn't call myself a producer. I just called myself a rapper who was doing his own beats. And once I started, gaining some ground, meeting folks in the industry after I got out of the Navy, it became apparent that, like, when I talked to Easy still had at that point, Above the Law's next album, I think Cocaine's either first or next album was to come, and a few other folks that he had on his roster. He says, man, we'll definitely do an album on you. I like the stuff. But, as far as production-wise, we could use you right now. Okay, well, I believe they had gone on tour or whatever was going on with NWA. And then in the process, I was still moving around. I already had bumped into Dre and Easy and all of them through Boss Hog, R.I.P. And, it just so so happened that I wound up over at Death Row. So that's pretty much how that happened.
And I gotta say as well, if you don't mind me asking, like, because I do know you just briefly talked about how you got to Death Row, but like, how did you originally get connected with Suge Knight? Did you just like bump into him one day, or did you guys know each other for a long time? Because I do know you're from Compton, and I do know as well that Suge Knight is from around that area as well.
Correct. Suge and I know each other from before Death Row. Definitely. Suge Knight went to school at Linwood High School with a cousin of mine named Earl Tucker. Suge, I think, is 2 years behind me, and as far as graduating and whatnot. And that's how he and I knew one another. And back around that time when I would either go to Linwood games or show up somewhere where they were, he and I already had a rapport. As far as that's Tuck's cousin. That's what they call my cousin Tuck. That's Tuck's cousin of this and that kind of thing. So we already had a rapport. So when I got out of the Navy, I bumped into him a few times. And just the way I'd come across Dre on another occasion to have him hear some stuff, Suge was there to let me ride video. And, Dre and I already had talked. And he had heard the music. And he said, well, come on down to the office on Tuesday. And when I bumped into Suge, he had asked me a couple of questions. Hey, man, you talk to Dre? Yeah. You let him hear something? Yeah. Did he like it? Yeah. What do you say? Come on down to the studio. Come on down to the office on Tuesday. He just kind of grinned about it, said, all right, we'll see you Tuesday. And that was pretty much it, as far as that was concerned.
And it definitely sounded like Dr. Dre really enjoyed what you actually brought to the table, man. So it definitely sounded like right there the opportunity was already flourishing.
Well, it did. It didn't take off the first time I let him hear some stuff. The first time I let him hear some stuff, he liked it, but he said it. If I remember his correct words were, I like it. I like where it's going, but it sounds incomplete. Bring me something else. And in time, I did bring him something else, and then that's when he said, it's a Let Me Ride video. That's when he said, come on down. I mean, I had bumped into him. I knew. Let me slow down a little bit. The way I met them was I had met Boss Hogg through Ren's brother Charles. And the way I met Charles was through Boss Hogg's younger brother, Bulky Loke. I forgot which video he was shooting, but it was for a couple cuts off the Hell in Black album. And they had asked me to, Boss Hogg invited me down. It wound up where I could get in a couple shots in the video and that kind of thing. And as Ren's artists, I found out later on that they pretty much all grew up in about the same area at Compton, so it's not like they didn't know each other. And one of these video shoots, Eric was there, Cube was there, Yella was there, Dre was there, Easy was there, and a few other folks, DJ Speed, DJ Train, rest in peace, and a few other guys. Train's brother, I think Tutti was there, who was with Torture Chamber. And that's when I was basically given my grand introduction to not only, just Ruthless Records, but NWA as a whole. And at that point, Boss Hogg had told Dre that, hey, man, my man is a producer. And initially when I met him, he says, oh, hey, Big Man tells me you produce. I said, yeah, I do. And he says, okay, well, whenever you, get a minute, let me hear something. And so that was initially his and my first introduction. And then I'd gone down another time after he said come down to the studio, bring it back to date. When he said come down to the office, he called me and says, meet me at the studio. So if I'm not mistaken, the studio was Stevie Wonder's, I think it's called Wonderland in the Valley. Went out there, met him out there, and, we sat and talked, and it was actually in the studio. He was working on excuse me, I think he was working on a remix to something off of Snoop's first album. So we sitting in there with this big console, and it's just me and him, and the engineer was just kind of ducking his head in and out. And I let him hear some more stuff, and then I'm sitting at one end of the console. He's asking me a couple questions, and then he's sitting at the other end, and then I just noticed, like, when he started playing the stuff, it just kept getting louder and louder and louder, you know, and then eventually when, you know, you've been around him enough, you know that a lot of times when Dre is playing music, you know, he plays it pretty much at full volume, you know, or if not at full volume, it's loud because he's critiquing and doing whatever he's doing. But it was just kind of a trip at that point, just for me personally, just to sit at one end of the console and watch him turn up the volume and, you know, tap his foot and bob his head to, you know, my music. So, excuse me. To me, that was one of the best compliments I could have ever gotten, you know, and it did not have to be verbal. So that's pretty much how that happened.
And also, when you brought up a few moments ago about the Let Me Ride music video that you were actually, you got to witness it from behind the scenes, I was wondering if we can actually touch base on that here for a few moments. And I just have to ask, man, what was it like being able to just watch this music video be created from behind the scenes? Because this was one of the very first Death Row Records music videos, if not the very first one to actually be just recorded and created.
Anytime you're privy to that type of access, it's a privilege and an honor, and you really should show your appreciation by conducting yourself like you have some sense, whether you know everybody or not. Having said that, to see the process and see, excuse me, a piece of a storyboard, or watch an artist or producer or director or all of the above in action, you know, it is a whole different world, and it really opens you up to just the full process. You know, regarding Boss Hogg's videos, I had a couple of quick little shots in there. At one point, just watching Dre and him saying, well, you know, well, since you're going to be a part of the company, you know, you might as well come on down and, you know, watch what's going on and, you know, see what's going on. And eventually there's two different parts in the Let Me Ride video that I'm actually in. The main one is we're walking out of the liquor store, and there's a guy sitting there in a wheelchair, and Dre hands him a 40. And I'm walking behind him. There's another part where we're sitting in a Rag 64, and they're playing the music, and I forgot what the actual shot was, but one of the guys was taking a shot, looking at he'd aimed the camera in the rearview mirror at the two of us in the back seat, and one of the things that I know I've been blessed to do is attention to detail, as far as just seeing, you know, different homies, you know, in Compton with low riders and just cars in general with sounds. You know, if you got enough sounds in your car, you know, your rear view mirror will rattle. And for the type music that was playing through those speakers, and I know what it's supposed to do, I told one of the other homies, I said, man, somebody needs to bang on the edge of this windshield. He said, why? And I said, because I said, think about it. I said, when you playing sounds in your car, I said, doesn't your rear view rattle? He goes, yeah. You know, and we all kind of laughed about it. So to answer your question directly, it opens you up to a whole different world, and the possibilities are limitless once you cross that path as far as music. Because, you know, if you want to be a producer or a rapper or artist the rest of your life, fine. You know, but if you decide to detour, you know, you can get into videos, you can get into film, you can get into voiceovers, you can get into just being on a set, you know, letting them know, hey, look, by the time you finish that last scene, he only had one shoe on. You know, you started the scene that's supposed to, you know, come after that, he's got two shoes, you know, stuff like that. You know, so you just do your little homework, and You know, it's a lot that can come from that.
And especially as well, a lot of people might not recognize something like the mirror rattling, but other people, kind of like yourself, that really does pay attention to that detail will notice it. So it's really good they had somebody on set like yourself that could point out these little things to make the video a lot more authentic and realistic for the viewers, for a better viewing experience.
Well, I'm pretty sure I wasn't the only one who noticed it. I think at the minute where we were, I think I was probably just the closest and just the one closest to the person to be able to just say that. You know, excuse me. There's a lot of technical people, you know, in these positions. You know, regardless what they look like, what they have on. You know, a lot of times people have issues judging the book by the cover. But you know, I've met a lot of intelligent people, you know, behind the scenes who know their craft, very unassuming people, you know. Example, one of the guys on that video shoot, if I'm not mistaken, he would fly out from somewhere back east from Sunday to Thursday, fly back out like Thursday night, go back wherever he went and come back, and that was his thing. And he was shooting videos, and he wasn't the director or anything like that. But he had something to do with videos, and as far as I knew, he was making a great deal of money. And if you saw him walking down the street somewhere, you'd never know that's what he did.
And also as well, in the year 1994, you actually had the opportunity to do some production work on the soundtrack for Murder Was the Case on the song The Eulogy. I was wondering, what was it like being able to work production on this infamous record, because this is a staple within Death Row Records hip-hop history?
It is a staple, and to have been able to contribute to that project indeed was a blessing. And there's a lot of competition that went on. And when I say competition, I don't mean, you know, from a negative standpoint. As far as all the producers at that time that I knew that were over there, it was about 7 of us that were considered roster. You could walk in one studio and hear what Quick was doing. You could walk in another studio and hear what Daz was doing. Meech Wells would come in and do his thing. We would hear, you know, Dre would send something, because Dre did a lot of his work at home. He would send something in or bring something in, or Snoop would play it, or whatever the case is. But long story short, it was a situation where there was so much inspiration and camaraderie and just a willingness to take advantage of what was before us. We all just wanted to do well, and we were willing to be there for one another to help the other person just to see to it they had what they needed. Regarding the production I did for Boss Hogg, I just called myself staying busy, presented in the track. He's not here to tell the story, but if you listen to other interviews he's done, you would hear him say it. Initially, he didn't like the track because there was 2 tracks on the tape that I handed him, and he was really interested in the first one, and I let him hear it over the phone. Well, when he got to my house to come pick up the tape, I said, "Hey, man, I want you to listen to the song." And he goes, yeah, that's all right. Anybody knows Boss Hogg. You know, he was a funny dude, man. He was real comical. He was a serious cat, but he was very comical, and he had a quick wit and a hell of a sense of humor about him. And I just kept pressing the issue. I said, "Nah, man, I can hear you on this song." And I kind of wore him down a little bit, and he goes, "All right, you bastard, go ahead and put it on the tape," and we laughed about it. He says he was heading out to Pomona one night to go see a girl, and he did not get a chance to rewind the tape quick enough before the music to The Eulogy kicked in. And when it kicked in, he said between him being on the highway by himself, it was late at night, he had already smoked a joint or two or whatever he smoked, and he said that's how the process started when he started not only to like that song, but immediately start trying to come up with lyrics to that song. Now, production-wise, there was Dre, there was Quick, there was Meech Wells, there was Daz. There was a few other folks. I can't think of their name, no disrespect, but long story short, there was pressure, but not, when I say pressure, I don't mean it like, oh my God, I'm sitting here, oh, what am I going to do? No, it was just like, okay, I'm sitting in the midst of these people, and I'm not only hearing what they're doing, it's not only that I've heard what they've done, but I'm hearing what they're doing. So, for Boss Hogg to have chosen that track, and then once he pretty much finished the track, I got word that Dre had heard it, he liked Snoop had heard it, and definitely wanted it on the soundtrack. Boss Hogg's manager had pushed for that as well. I got to give her props for that. And, man, it just received, it got a warm welcome, and I'm grateful. And as I look back now, keep it in mind, they refer to that era as the golden era. Just for me to have been able to contribute at that time, my contribution, and have it not only be received, but received as well as I hear it has, and then to know that it's a part of that soundtrack and what it means to Death Row, I'm just grateful, man. I'm just grateful.
And I got to say as well, when you were throughout the interview, you were talking about the late great it's a CPO, man. I got to say, such a legendary individual, man. And I got to say, gone too soon as well, man. I had the opportunity to interview him about a couple years before his untimely passing, and he was such a tremendous interview, just such a tremendous person to interview. Sorry, just being able to speak with him, he really was a very funny stand-up individual.
Yeah, he was. I had the opportunity to meet him within the first year I got out of the Navy. I got out of the Navy in '89 and in March. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe by March of '90 is when I was actually introduced to him. And he was a prolific writer, man. He had the voice. He had the style. He conveyed his messages, with precision. He always managed to interject some levity. There was always something that would make me laugh in the way he said something in his verses. His birthday was just Friday, and that was the first year that I didn't really get a chance. I didn't have the opportunity. I normally called him 11:59 the night before, and we talked, and he would do the same on my birthday. He was a good dude, man. We called him the rap coach. He was fun-loving. He was a hermit. He would tell you that. No, he was not a hermit. He was a recluse. Self-imposed. He tried to mind his own business. I shouldn't say tried. He minded his own business. Didn't mess with folks. He was serious about his craft. He was serious about writing in general. Very intelligent guy, man. Give you the shirt off his back. And, I miss him. I'll say that to say the least. I do miss him. But I do know he's in heaven. So, I'm just grateful, man. I had the opportunity for maybe 32 years to really know him and not just be a producer of one of his songs. We were actually friends. You know what I mean? So, yeah, he was a good dude, man. He was a good dude.
And I just do want to say it and just express my sincere condolences, man. It's never easy losing a friend, especially if there's someone of that many years, man. So from me to you, my sincere condolences, man. He was such a phenomenal individual.
No, we appreciate it, man. On behalf of his family as well, yeah. We appreciate it. Thank you.
And also, I do have to ask this question because one thing I've always done, because I've interviewed a lot of individuals from Death Row, whether it was artists, producers, engineers, and I've always had like mixed reviews of their time at Death Row Records. But I have to ask, man, what was the atmosphere like for yourself as a producer at Death Row Records? Did you actually have a positive time over there, or did you run into some unfortunate events as well?
No, I didn't run into any unfortunate events. That's not to say that some of those unfortunate events that everybody else heard about didn't happen while I was there. When I showed up to the studio, man, I showed up to do my work. And keep in mind, the dog pound and everybody was pretty much already established. When I got over there, the Chronic already had dropped. And it was told to me point blank that they were withdrawing all promotions on the Chronic, and they were then going to direct it to Snoop's album. Snoop's album had not quite dropped, but it was done. So that's the time frame I got over there. I did my work. You know, I had my drinks, talked to folks, you know, rubbed elbows with folks in the front office, whomever was there. You know, it was a family atmosphere. As far as it goes, I didn't run into any of the horror stories that I've heard about as far as, you know, engineers, you know, rewinding tapes too far or whatever happened. You know, I wasn't there in cases like that. Anything Suge and I had an issue with, we had one issue where he and I were able to sit down and talk about it. You know, keep in mind, we've known each other since high school, you know what I mean? We were able to talk about things when we had a difference of opinion or whatever. It was minute. It wasn't anything, you know, disrespectful or, you know, life-shattering, you know what I mean? So a lot of the stuff that a lot of you guys had heard about, it was kind of funny to me. The incidents weren't funny, but what was funny to me was some of the stuff that you guys heard about as the general public, by the time you guys heard about it, at that point, some of that stuff was like 2-3 years old. And, you know, folks were, you know, oh my God, I heard this, or oh my God, what's going on over there, whatever the case is. You know, I didn't run into a lot of stuff that a lot of people said they heard about.
And also as well, after leaving Death Row Records, you actually did phenomenal production work on I Smooth 7's album Ghetto Life. What actually made you decide to depart from Death Row? And of course, how did you originally get connected with Smooth 7? Because that album was so amazingly produced. Like, the sound quality on that was just phenomenal.
Well, thank you, man. I forgot how many songs DJ Slip from CMW did, but he was heavily involved with that project. I forgot how I met Smooth, but I know it had to have been through. I shouldn't say I forgot how I met it. I forgot exactly how I met it, but it was through DJ Slip and all the guys that would know him, Fat Jack or somebody like that. That, you know, it was like one big production pool. Once I left and gone on and done a few other things, was trying to do a few other things, you know. Not who called me, but somebody says, hey, you know, Smooth is working on an album, you know, and I said, okay, well, good, give him my number. So he called, talked for a little while. He said, hey, yeah, man, if you got anything, I'd like to hear it. Well, I had something that I was working on, and in my opinion, it wasn't done. He heard it and liked it. And we actually had one of my other buddies, a guy by the name of Pokey Coleman. He actually played the guitar on it. DJ Mike T did the DJing on it, scratches and all that. And DJ Slip mixed it. And it was funny because the same day that they mixed that was one of the same days I was in the studio working on something somewhere else. I don't know if it was for Ice-T or something, but that was the first time that I actually had two things going on the same day in two different places. And the thing I really appreciated about DJ Slip, as far as all that I was able to learn from him, was I really trusted his ear mixing, you know, because he's the one who pretty much mixed practically everything for Compton's Most Wanted. So he had called me and says, hey, man, I have this. I forgot whether it was the kick or the break beat or whatever. You want this one up top or on the bottom or where you want it? And I just told him, I said, yeah, I want the hats and the break beat to stand out just a tad bit more. Other than that, that was it. But, yeah, that was a nice album, man. That, from what I understand, too, is a classic, you know, regardless of whether the rest of the world has really heard it the way we have. I mean, it just keeps coming back. It's just different people, different players, and people who are involved on that project, man. You know, so again, I'm just grateful to have been involved with it, man, and able to contribute, you know, what I could. You know what I mean? So I'm good with that.
And I gotta say as well, the one song off that project that was absolutely one of my favorites was actually Coolin' in the Ghetto, that actually had a phenomenal independent artist at the time, Mr. Mad Pup, that now goes by Mad Pup. I don't know, I really enjoyed that song and how you guys did it. The video was even phenomenal as well.
That was a nice video, and that was a very nice song. I'm with you on that one, man. I'm a straight fan about that one because I had nothing to do with that song. The only thing I had to do with that song was press and play. You know what I mean? I did no production on it. I think by the time I initially heard that song, I think they were done with it. You know, so, you know, that was, you know, that's the good thing about certain things. Back then, especially, you know, the vibe was, you know, hey, man, listen to what we did last night. Oh, hey, man, what do you think? You know, you think we should add anything? They didn't ask me that, but I said that was the good thing about back then. You know, so, yeah, that was a nice one. It was a nice one.
And before we move off the topic of iSmooth7, the one thing I have to ask, are you guys still keep in contact after all these years? Because it seems like after he released that album, he unfortunately kind of just like dropped off from the music industry.
I'm not exactly sure what happened with Smooth. I know enough people. I should say there's enough people as well as myself who know one another that you know, if I wanted to know how he's doing or just to make sure he's okay, I can put a call out to a couple folks. Excuse me. And they'll be like, yeah, he's okay. I'm raised in an era where if you're going through certain things, and I'm just saying this as an example, if you're going through some things and you choose not to share, I'm not going to pry. You understand what I'm saying? Like I said, I knew enough people that I trusted that would tell me he's cool, he's going through whatever he's going through, but he's okay. Okay. From what I understand, as of late, in the last couple of years, I think he's been back in a little bit more circulation with a few other people. I personally have not seen him. I have not spoken with him, but you heard of Abby Rizzle? Hello?
I'm here. My apologies. I was just listening. My apologies.
No, it's okay. No, have you heard of Abby Rizzle?
I have not actually.
Okay, he's on that album. He's actually on the song I did, Struggling. I know that's what they call him on Instagram, but anyway, if I'm not mistaken, within the last couple of years, he's either spoken to him, seen him, or whatever, because there's been a resurgence of that album. So, as far as that goes, if anybody would want to try to get a hold of him, I guess you probably try to talk to him about it. But like I said, he told me as far as he knows, he's doing fine, and he's just living his life. So I wish him well, you know. I wish him well, you know.
And also, you mentioned briefly earlier on in the interview about how you worked a little bit with Ice-T, and in '96 you actually worked production for Ice-T on his song "I Must Stand," which I gotta say is most definitely one of my personal favorite Ice-T tracks. So I have to ask, what was it like being able to just work alongside Ice-T in the studio and working on this song in particular?
Well, thank you first and foremost. I'll tell you a little fun fact about that song. That's when, I don't know about everybody else, at that time, cassettes were still prevalent. I had two 90-minute cassettes, and I already had bumped into him, talked to him, and been up to the house a couple times, and we had set up this appointment to come by so he could hear some stuff. And he says, "Well, man, I like your stuff. I want to hear what you got because I'm looking for a single and whatever else that you might have." Okay. We went through both sides of both those 90-minute cassettes, and the music for "I Must Stand" was the last song on side 2. And he had a home studio. This is when he was in the Hollywood Hills. And I never forget it because I'm sitting there, I'm a fan first. And when I say fan first, that's just to remain humble about the situation. And then, 10 years prior to that, I'm looking at the album that had him, Darlene, and Evil Lee standing there with the guns. And then here it is 10 years later, I'm sitting in the studio next to him, He's a cool guy, very intelligent, willing to share his knowledge. And he'll look at. I will say this: to see him stand up when he heard that music and he said, "This is it. This is it." And I kind of looked because he was on my right, and I'm thinking to myself. I looked at him and I asked him. I said, "Are you sure?" And I'm not saying this from doubting my music. I'm saying that from a standpoint that you got to keep in mind at this point. Snoop's album was out there making a whole lot of noise. The G-Funk thing was real big, and there was a lot of other folks, with their contributions and whatnot. And, the music's I'm a laid-back cat. I don't really do a whole lot of fast stuff. And I asked him, I said, "Are you sure?" He said, "Yeah, this is okay." And that was pretty much it. I wasn't there when he laid the vocals. He lived with it, whatnot, did his thing, and he told me what his concept was. And, when he told me that it was definitely going to be the single, I'm not going to say I was shocked, but I was pleasantly surprised, not from doubt, but just from the standpoint that, wow, he really wants to, do this with my work. And they got a video to it. The video turned out nice. And again, man, just was making my steps and trying to make my way in the industry, man, trying to, put my foot down and contribute what I could.
And that song also, if I'm not mistaken, actually made it to his, I believe, his greatest hits album that actually came out in the year 2000. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that song actually was on that particular project as well.
I'm not sure. Don't quote me, but I believe it probably is. So yeah, I just excuse me. It just goes to show, man, if you keep your faith in the right spot, for where God is concerned, and do what you do, stay diligent, things will happen. I'm not going to sit here and say that, I knew this was going to happen, or I knew that was, no. I just was, as I look back now, man, I'm going to be honest with you, as I look back, God had to have set all that up. Just the way I met folks, certain stuff was like movie scenes. I might go to a club and with one person and then go to the restroom and then there's DOC. I would always bump into DOC at a club somewhere. Stuff like that. And then of course we all started coming to light that we all knew some of the same people. And the rap industry really is not that big, man. When you really look at it, and Boss Hogg and I used to say, you could take like the size of a dollar bill and you place a 50-cent piece on top of that dollar bill, that's about how big the rap industry is as far as where the music industry is, as far as just the size of it. All I can say, man, again, I'm just grateful.
And also, one of the things that I actually really wanted to ask you, because of course, like as the world already knows, you are a big staple within Death Row Records hip hop history. And if the listeners didn't know this, they definitely know just from the beginning of this interview right up until now. And of course, as you already know, Death Row Records has recently been purchased by Snoop Dogg, one of the very first artists that was originally signed to Death Row Records. And I just have to ask, man, because obviously he's making some drastic changes, turning it into an NFT label. And I want to know, a person that used to do phenomenal production work for the company at during its beginning stages, what is your take on that? Do you actually think an NFT label is exactly what the music industry needs today?
To be honest with you, I'm not really up on all the NFT stuff. Excuse me. It's his label, or however much he owns of it. He can do what he wants to do with it, and I say that because it's his, not with any malice or discontent. I've recently just started to kind of do some homework on NFTs and all that kind of stuff. All I know, man, is Death Row had a whole lot of music that came, a whole lot of great music that came out, and there's a whole lot of great music that is still in those vaults that I was around to hear when it was put together and it never came to light from Dogpound and a few other folks. But I don't know, man. I just think that I do believe that there's enough people over there that regardless of what they do, NFT or not, again, I'm not really up on what all NFTs are. I'm quite sure somebody over there is still going to put the music out or do whatever they do with it in a form where people can still purchase it and or stream it or whatever the case may be. Because at the end of the day, I honestly believe, man, that music is what's really going to continue to speak. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but like I said, it's his label.
But I have to ask, what is next for yourself, Sandman? Because, of course, I know we only touched base on, 1% of your iconic career here this evening, but is there anything we happen to miss during tonight's broadcast? Anything else you do still want to talk about or promote? Well, we still got you here live on 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM this evening.
No, I appreciate that. I'm still working on a few things. In touch with some folks that, I've wanted to... I have a wish list still of specific artists that I would like to work with even after all this time. And there's a couple new guys that I'd like to do some work with. Other than that, man, I just continue to do what I do, learn as much as I can. Excuse me. Learn how to apply it. And just keep working. I don't do music full time like I used to. It's more of it's a hobby still, but and when I say a hobby, I would do music regardless of whether or not I'm getting paid for it or not. That's the love I have for it. As far as much as I learn, I have been learning, and I like to learn about the gift I've been given. My main weapon of choice is drums. Some years back, I got a couple of years of piano under my belt just to help out with certain things. And then about 3 years ago, I picked up a bass and started learning that. So I'm trying to be a little more self-contained because a lot of people are busy and people do have good intentions, and even think people with good intentions, certain situations don't work out as far as deadlines that you may have or they may have. So I'm just trying to, do what I do so I can bring more to the table. And I won't say don't necessarily have to ask anyone else because I cannot do it all, but to have more control over what I'm doing and go from there. Other than that, man, I don't necessarily think we've missed anything. I mean, if you have any more questions, sure. But yeah, I'm just grateful, man. Just grateful.
And also, this is the time in the interview, Sandman, that I give a chance for the individual that does slide into the radio station airwaves, just a chance to give, like, shout-outs to whomever they want to give shout-outs to, but most of all, your social media handles. That way our listeners can follow you and stay updated on everything you have going on, and of course, potentially reach out as well if they do want a production feature, that is.
I appreciate it. My Instagram is Sandman, Sandman, Music, MUSIC, CPT. Other than that, that's pretty much the main one I use. I'm on Facebook, but, you know, I'm on there pretty much to keep up with family. Anything as far as anybody wants to contact me about production or whatever the case is, that would be the best way to contact.
And I just got to say...
Sorry, what
no.
was the other thing you said about it?
Oh, I just mentioned if you want to give anybody some shout-outs, that way if you have any, like, friends or family listening and you want to shout them out, I always like giving the artists that time to actually do that.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I want to give a big shout-out to my big brother, Anthony A.K. King, my folks down in Louisiana, my sister, Julie, anybody who I shot the flyer for today's event who tuned in. Thank you for listening. Thank everybody for their support. Thank all the listeners especially, because without them, we wouldn't even be sitting here talking. Excuse me. Anybody who's lent a helping hand, kind word, advice, Daz, DJ Quick, Compton's Most Wanted, MC Ren, NWA. Again, Boss Hog, rest in peace. Rest in peace to his moms, Doris Edwards, Chip Kashan from the Capital Punishment Organization, Juju, Battle Cat, DJ Silk, Dr. Dre, especially, you know, if it wasn't for God using him, that's how it went down. So, you know, I got to thank him, you know. And does anybody else who's lent support, people at my job, I want to say what's up to Ralph and a few other folks at my job. Other than that, man, no disrespect if I didn't mention your name. Oh, Melvin Wayford Jr., or Senior, rather. All my buddies from Compton. The Compton Majestics chapter. I want to say what's up to Gangster. I want to say what's up to Rail, Hammond, and a few other folks. That's pretty much it, man. I'd be here all night, man.
And I'm pretty sure if you did miss anybody, individuals can definitely understand, you know what I mean? Especially when you're put on the spot like that, and not to mention you're also live on the air, it definitely comes with some blank moments as well.
No, it does, man. Just, you know, I'm just grateful. You know, I appreciate you guys reaching out, you know, at least wanting to see and hear, you know, how it went down from my perspective, you know. Let me say this if I may, as far as anybody up and coming, you know, the only person that can stop you is you. You know, we've all dealt with or are dealing with adverse conditions, whether they be financial, familial, whatever it is. You know, you just keep your faith in the right place with God and keep pushing forward, you know, and one way or another it will happen. You know, this is definitely a business where you will get knocked down, but it's not how many times you get knocked down. It's about how many times you get up. You know, so if you believe in yourself and you really believe that you have a talent, a gift, doesn't matter what somebody else is telling you, whether they're, oh man, it's 10 million other people out there doing the same thing you're doing. What makes you think yours are different? Well, yours are different because you're doing it. So keep believing in yourself and keep marching forward. That's what I would say.
And I got to say as well, that is definitely some phenomenal advice, and I'm pretty sure a lot of individuals are listening to this interview, or even if they're listening to the replay of this interview, I'm pretty sure someone is going to take something away from those words and actually use those to their advantage.
Well, I would hope so. Not because it's me. You know, anybody that you see successful, or anybody who that's deemed successful, or they've made it, or they've arrived. I don't like the statement they've arrived, but man, there's a lot that goes on that as far as help. And when I say help, that doesn't mean that person is helpless. Nobody does it on their own. But in my humble opinion, for a person to say they did it all on their own or they're self-made, no, you're not. And the reason I say that is because in my walk, God has provided me with a ton of people all along, before, during, and after I made it to death row and left, you know, that are still important to me to this day, that their words of wisdom are still important to me to this day to help keep me in line, to keep me focused, to keep me on track for what I do, whether they're blood related or I've known you for 55 years plus or whatever. You know, like I said, it's a kind word or a bite to eat or whatever. Hey, man, let's go have lunch, whatever. Let me sit down and talk to you, whatever. I was raised by my great-grandmother. People don't have to do anything for you. They got their own stuff going on, but when they do, the least you can do is say thank you. Acknowledge it and say thank you. So, like I said, we've all gotten help in some kind of way, whether you consider it help or not. And help doesn't mean that you're inadequate. You know, so that's all I'm saying, man.
And I gotta say, first and foremost, Sandman, thank you so much for just giving us a bit of your time here this evening. And of course, thank you so much for years of hard work and dedication in the studio, because without you, we wouldn't have had so many legendary records and songs throughout hip-hop, man. So for that, thank you so much for your contribution, because sometimes individuals sometimes think that it's just the artist that does it all, but they forget about the producers, the engineers, and the individuals marketing and pushing these records and just creating them behind the scenes that also are you guys are the reason why these records sound so clean and amazing the way they do. So thank you so much for just your contribution to hip-hop, man, because you helped give birth to some iconic classic records.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Thank you. And speaking of records sounding clean, I do have one more shout-out. I want to shout out John Payne, called him JP. Very instrumental in mixes, shedding light, giving advice, someone who would definitely tell you the truth and who's not going to, mince words about the truth, and that's what people need. You know, there's a lot of yes people around, and I choose not to be involved when I find yes people. I prefer you tell me the truth, but you know what, man, there was a lot of, again, I appreciate the compliment, and I humbly say thank you. There were a lot of iconic records, man, long before I got where I was, and I happened to be in a company where one of the owners had put out some monumental records before I was tapped on the shoulder to come over there. I'm talking about Dre. You know, when you listen and study and you look at the company you're in, and you're blessed to be in and walk amongst giants, and they accept you and respect you for who you are, for what you bring to the table, you know, that in itself is a blessing. And again, I just did my best to make sure that what I brought to the table was not just up to par. I mean, it was going to be up to par with me, of course, but, you know, to rival what I believe they would do, but stay in my lane. You know, I knew my record wasn't necessarily going to be on the radio. You know, looking at the grand scheme of things, you know, they say you have the radio, the club, and the streets. Well, me seeing some of my big homies low riding and bumping sounds in the streets and whatnot, well, I pretty much knew, since that was the category, mine more than likely would be played in the streets. And it's nice. I mean, Quick has a whole lot of nice club stuff and dance stuff, and it bumps, you know, and I love it. I also know my lane. Mine is that slow, dark, eerie stuff, you know, and that's what I stick to. You know, if you hear something out of that category, it's because that's how it turned out, not because I'm trying to learn something new. You know, of course, I do listen to the new stuff, and I will incorporate certain things. I mean, but I do know what my gift is. I know what my lane is. I do try to expand it, but I know what my lane is, and that's what I try to stick to, man. So I hope that when this other battery and stuff comes out, I hope it's accepted as well, you know, as the last stuff was. And we just go from there, man. Like I said, it's just about the contribution and trying to keep it real.
And I gotta say, when those records do drop to the general public, I am pretty darn sure that they are actually going to be well received, just as the other ones were, because real hip hop heads will appreciate real hip hop like that. I can just say I can't wait for when they do drop to the general public, because I'd love to get my hands on some more Sandman productions.
Well, I appreciate it, man. In the event that once this stuff is solidified and taken care of, you know, I can shoot you a text or email to let you know what's coming down the pipeline. I mean, I have no issue with that. You know, just I'm in no rush, man, and I know none of us are going to live forever. Between the learning process and just making sure, you know, I do what I do and it's done the way I want it done. You know what I mean? I'm still, like I said, I'm still learning. You know, the more I learn, I need to learn more. And that's how I operate as far as, you know, the gift I've been given. So, again, I appreciate the vote of confidence. And it's not that I'm not confident. Understand that. I'm confident in what I do. You know, I just navigate and do what I do. And, you know, we're all trying to come up with something new. You know, we could always do some stuff that was done in the past. And every once in a while, I think it is good that somebody like Battle Cat will come up with, you know, straight, just nasty funk. You know, that you have no choice but to dance or boogie or, you know, I won't say tear up your speakers in your cars, but I mean, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, so yeah. I mean, it goes in waves anyway, man. And as far as I'm concerned, the hip hop that we're talking about, it will never go out of style. It will always, I honestly believe there will always be a demand for it because of the authenticity of it. You know, so, you know, I mean, I said long before the internet and all that really got as big as it really became, as long you could be somewhere in bumfuck Egypt, pardon my expression, in a garage, in a hole 900 feet underground, and you can work on whatever you work on and put it out. Somebody out there is going to take a liking to it. For me, it's not about numbers. It's about self-expression. I've had people walk up to me or find out, oh, you're the guy that did this track, or you did that track? Yeah. Oh, man. You know, oh, this, and thank God I've heard compliments, and I accept them graciously. And honestly, because you got to keep in mind, man, people were spending hard-earned money on them CDs and them tapes back then. You know what I mean? So any compliment. Who was that one person? My mindset, too, is I believe it was Pharoah Monch on one of his songs. And if I'm wrong about the artist, forgive me, but I think it was Pharoah Monch. Pharoah Monch said, you went platinum or something, but I sold one in the hood. I'm the one guy. I'm the one guy that would, that would be like, yeah, I sold one in the hood. As far as me knowing that I kept it real with myself rather than selling out.
And I gotta say as well that is a great analogy just to actually go by, because like you said, people spend hard-earned money on these records, and back in the day, that's all you really could do. There was no streaming services. Unlike today, you can just open an app, like 10 different apps, and choose whatever streaming services you want. But I would rather go back in time and just buy CDs and cassettes and vinyls, because there's nothing better than holding that case in your hand and being able to open up the booklet, see who the producers are like yourself, read the thank you notes, and just, it makes you feel a lot closer to the music. You don't get that experience on Spotify. Yeah, you can read the credits, but realistically, it's not really the same feeling when you can just scroll with your thumb.
I agree. One of my big brothers, we talk about that. A lot of the guys that I came up with, Chill, AK, and a few other folks, Battle Cat, and I had just spoken a couple weeks back, and we talk about it, and I share that with some of the younger kids that you just don't understand. It's one thing for somebody to sample something, and that's great. I'm not knocking sampling. What I'm saying is, a lot of these records that are sampled, I was around when they came out, so I saw the effect that these records had on people. I saw the effect it had in the streets. I saw the effect it had in the clubs. I watched my mother when a new Al Green record came out. A new Barry White record came out. Johnny Bristol. I saw my elders what moved them and what brought tears to their eyes. Coming up as a kid up to, I guess whenever they stopped, making CDs and stuff prevalent, yeah, that was the big thing. I agree. Part of the excitement was not only did you get the new records, but you got to see who played what, who arranged what, who produced what they played. Did he play a mini moog, a Hammond organ? What kind of bass did this guy use? What kind of guitar did that guy? I mean, that was part of the process. Who sang lead? Who sang backup? That was a real big thing. And that is one thing that a lot of the kids that are around now, that is this generation, they don't necessarily get to experience that in mass. Recently I just repurchased the reissues of the Above the Rim and the Murder Was a Case CDs, and when I opened them, man, it brought back memories just to read. Oh, that's right, Daz did it. Daz did this one. I know it's one quick did. That's right, I forgot so-and-so did background vocals. That's the stuff that people don't know about, man. It's lost. It's lost.
And I got to say, first and foremost, Sam, man, again, thank you so much for just giving us a bit of your time, man, and just sharing some of these amazing stories, man. It definitely was an honor. And I got to say, when these new records do drop to the general public, we got to get you back on here to the radio station just to talk about them, and of course, much more of your history. Because like I mentioned, I know we only touch base on like 1% of your iconic career here this evening.
No, I appreciate it, man. The pleasure is mine. I thank you. Just the fact that, like I said, somebody wanted to hear, my perception. This is a little kid from Compton, who had a love for music, who, was blessed to, to be where I was, when I was, at the biggest record company in the universe at the height of their success. That was a blessing for me to be there. And like I said, I appreciate the fact, man, that, excuse me, you just wanted to hear my side of the story, man. Thank you.
Hey, you are most certainly welcome. A lot of these records actually influenced me and helped me through a lot of difficult times, man. So just being able to hear the stories behind them and, of course, hear your perspective, the individual that produced them, was an absolute honor. So thank you so much, Sandman, and I'm pretty sure down the line we definitely shall talk again soon. But for now, definitely have yourself a phenomenal Monday night.
You do the same, man. Thank you again.
You're most certainly welcome.
All right, have a good one.